Hey YouTube, welcome back to EagleX TCG, and for today's video I want to talk about the meta, but not the normal talk that you've been getting from a lot of other videos, you know, just people talking about what's the best. I want to talk about my observation, going to these locals, talking to people that are playing, observing results online. This meta is circular, and I think that that's a good thing. I've had to sit down and I've had to wonder about it, but I think it's a good thing. So we're going to talk about why I think it's circular. We're going to talk about the evidence that backs this up and break down the deck layout by decks. And then we're also going to, you know, not only dive into the pros and cons, but also talk about what this means for your average tournament, your regional tournament, and beyond. So strap yourselves in. I hope you guys enjoy this sort of content, and make sure you like the video if you like this sort, and then if you love it, subscribe so you can see more Gundam content in the future. Now let's hop into the subject matter. So out of all of my history of playing Bandai card games, I don't think a game has ever solidified its meta in set 1 as fast as the Gundam card game. And I think that's because everybody's excited to play this game, right? You have people filling up locals, you have people going to these Gen Con events, you have people going off of the beta meta, you have people playing in webcams hosted by excellent pillars in the community such as EagleX as well as Eggman. You have all sorts of interaction going on, and this is leading to the meta being figured out very quickly, and I think we have a solidified tier 1. Now the cool thing about this format though is even the other decks that aren't considered tier 1, I don't think anything really falls beneath tier 1.5. They can all pressure, they can all win, they all have the means to do what they're going to do. It's just that the consistency or power in certain stages of the game may not be there in order for them to be considered tier 1. But I think everyone can agree when I say that tier 1 generally includes one of these decks. Like if you look at a tournament winner, it is like 80% going to be one of these decks, and that is going to be white blue blockers, that's going to be green white wing, that is going to be blue red tempo, that's going to be green blue aggro. I think that pretty much covers the bases. No, yeah, that pretty much is that. And as cool as it is to have all of these the way they are, I do think that because of the way this meta is set up, you will not have a consistently settled meta. I think it's going to constantly shift until we get set 2. Now in 1.5 you pretty much have everything else. Red green Xeon or green red Xeon, I know lots of people want that to be tier 1, but I think the consistency just isn't quite there, and there's some things that are kind of hard to get over. And then you have things like the white red seed decks, my personal favorite blue white X1 Federation. I'm actually gonna get some games about that on camera soon enough, and we'll see about deck lists and whatnot. I gotta figure out how to split some things across the Patreon and the channel, but you have a lot of things really kind of getting in here, and I'm excited, super excited to see if this theory holds true. But so far, based off of data, based off of these tournament layouts, I think that this is the case. So when it comes down to it, what we're going to do is establish the wheel, and then we're going to talk about the pros and cons of each deck on the wheel. And I want to know by the end of this video if you agree with me or if you have something else to add. So let's hop into it, and then let's talk about the ramifications that this sort of format would have on what you should take to each and every tournament that you expect to do. So we're going to be starting off this wheel with the first deck that most people actually landed on in terms of testing, and that's going to be the powerful, even if it's starting to dwindle in popularity, white blue blockers. Now some of the names that I give these aren't going to sound familiar to you. I'll explain it the best I can, but I think most of the names that the community have given these decks don't make sense. So yeah, white blue blockers because the deck is predominantly white, then it goes into a blue splash, and so yes, white blue blockers. Now white blue blockers is normally going to center around a seed blocking package. Now it's not always gonna be seed because some of them are also academy. Going up, you generally have good cards to block with, such as Zawart, such as Ilfrith, such as Ailstrike, and then you can even end the top end with cards like Freedom. Now after that, the splash tends to go in one of two directions. You either splash with the Unicorn package, utilizing Unicorn Destroy mode, Unicorn mode, and Benager to get in much needed additional swings, a little bit of extra drawing, as well as the ability to rest anything, which is very, very important for reasons that we're going to get into in just a few moments. Or you go into the Academy build, because the Academy build is going to allow you to add in pilots like Suletta, which are going to add a much needed 2 HP, which walls out certain matchups, and then it's also going to allow you to free up your resources. So as long as you have cards to play, you have resources to play them. You also get to tech a lot of cool cards such as Aerial Rebuild to recycle cards to help you dig even further in your deck, potentially slop in cards like Unforeseen Incident to force unfavorable trades or just blowouts from your opponent, things like that. So that's pretty cool in my opinion. I think that's pretty cool. Now, the things about this deck that make it good is that in the mid-range kind of lifestyle, this is a mid-range destroyer. Ilfrit and Zord are very adept at locking damage out of the early game, and then you immediately are able to go into cards like Ailstrike to really stop that. Pilots like Kira allow more unfavorable trades to happen to your opponent, lowering AP by 2, allowing you to really chump a lot of things. And then your top end can even include cards like Freedom, which are very, very, very strong. Now, some of the decks that this deck will have trouble with are decks that can get around its blockers, or decks that can rest them so that they can't even be in the equation itself. That's going to be something that we really get into as we continue down this wheel. But yeah, you really have this deck being the mid-range king, and only certain things are going to get around that. Being able to rest the blockers is important, but it doesn't get rid of them, because if you don't destroy them this turn, they're going to still be there next turn, allowing the blockers to get in your way later. High Maneuver is a skill that's going to get straight past the blockers, but once again, if you don't kill them and they just destroy your High Maneuver unit the following turn, you're still kind of back to square one. They just might be missing a shield or two. So this is going to be a deck that really does shine. It is a rock, even if it is not showing as much, like people aren't showing it as much love in the format. But this takes us to our next slot in the wheel, because a major weakness to this deck is going to be the green-white Gundam Wing deck. Now, where this deck that we just talked about proceeds to dominate in the mid-range space, Green-White Gundam Wing has the strongest mid-game strongest in-game in the game, allowing you to pretty much put down Wing 0 after Wing 0, clearing out most early, actually pretty much most early to mid-game cards, and then you're able to pick off cards that are owning on the board with cards like the Wing Gundam from the starter deck. You have cards like Duo and Death Scythe able to come down and pretty much just annihilate things while ramping. And if you want to get jiggy with it, you can always tech in the Wu Fei package and use Shinlong in order to just destroy plenty of small bodies, get blockers out of the way, with Breach thrown into many of these cards to make sure that while you're going for board, you're also going for face. And this is going to be a really, really, really strong combination. Pairing it with white allows you to have early access to blockers like Zawart and Ilfrith to keep your life healthy, Ale if you want to include that in, and some decks do get greedy and even play Freedom if they really want to stabilize against certain other decks. However, the other thing it gives you access to is Overflowing Affection. When combined with the Path to Victory or Defeat, is going to really shore up your consistency as long as you can see said cards. If a game goes on too long, it's very, very hard to win against a deck like Gundam Wing. They, like I said, they just pound for pound have the biggest, baddest cards. Once a Death Scythe hits the board, it's very, very hard with a Death Scythe given Duo's +2 HP to actually be taken down without trading multiple cards into it, or one really big link you have. Wing 0 and Wing Gundam, once they have Hitos under them, you might as well just swing around them, because again, it is going to be very hard to take them down unless they've already taken damage first. And that happens a fair amount with the Wing, because they'll attack something, the Wing Gundam, they'll attack something to get into your shields. But with Wing 0, just dealing its 3 damage to everything and then going in with High Maneuver, it is definitely not easy to get that thing down from a 9-8 or 8-9 that it is. That's just crazy. So this is just a pretty big problem. However, this deck being a king of the late game generally is absolutely floored in the early game. And that is going to be where this next deck takes control. And that is going to be these green, blue, 1 Year War aggro decks. The reason why I call them 1 Year War aggro decks is because all these Xeon cards and these Federation cards are from the original Gundam series. That's the 1 Year War. Yeah, so The 1 Year War deck is a very interesting low to the ground deck that at its core is just trying to apply damage as quick as possible. And when you finally start to stabilize and play things like blockers, you can get caught with the Amro that's going to rest the blocker so that the rest of the field can keep swinging around it. You'll get caught with the G Fighter potentially paired with the Amro to pair something, make an unblockable attack, and then open the floodgates with that rest to have everything else swing. Or you have Char linking with his units to make Hymo and swinging straight over the blockers too. So deal as much damage as possible, and when your opponent tries to gum up the board, you're gonna go in and destroy those. And that is a very, very, very good strategy in order to destroy any deck that takes too long to get off the ground. Wing Gundam or Gundam Wing decks are sitting there fearing these aggro decks if played right, because these aggro decks should be able to go in and just mop them up. Now, this aggro deck has the pros of ending games as early as turn 4 if the draws were perfect on your end, suboptimal on your opponent's end, especially if they don't have blockers in their deck. The unfortunate weakness of the deck, though, is consistency. The decks don't really run search or draw. Char Zaku 2 is the only one that comes close, and since it's not a full Xeon Neo Xeon deck, you can, in weird worlds, whiff on that. And so there is going to be a little bit of a, you need to draw correctly in order to go off. But hey, you know, best of one game, you gotta roll the dice at some point after you roll the dice to go first or second. I didn't really think about that analogy through before I said it. The point is, you are going to have to just kind of see if variance defeats you or you conquer it. Now, the other thing that kind of gets in this deck's way is that when two aggro decks meet, they are going to have to turn their aggro into utility and defensive plays. But when one of those aggro decks has slightly slower aggro with the addition of burn damage in there, you're in for a completely different ballgame, which is going to bring us to our next part of the wheel, which is going to be the blue-red tempo deck. This deck is not as aggro as the 1 Year War green-blue deck, but it has a lot of ways to get rid of bodies via burn damage. And this is a monster killer of the aggro deck, seeing as that when it comes to the aggro deck trying to ball, what you're going to end up having is the aggro deck trying to be aggressive, the blue-red ping like tempo deck being aggressive, but also, yeah, get rid of that, get rid of that, get rid of that. I'm going to play 2 gun tanks to get rid of your body, you turn sideways, but now I've got 2 bodies to go at your shields. And you got to do something about that. You know what I mean? I'm going to play this this Kshatriya and pair it with Marita, pinging this for 1, pinging this for 2, swinging with this, and then pinging that again. It's dead now. Play gun tank with my last resource, ping that other thing for its 2nd damage. It's dead now. And you're constantly changing the dynamic of the board. And that's going to be incredibly hard for pure aggro to sustain against, whereas the blue-red tempo is going to feel very, very, very comfortable in a lot of these matchups. And the aggressiveness also, as a bonus, allows it to get in underneath Gundam Wing, or the Wing Gundam's, Gundam Wing's like late game kind of deck. And that's going to be pretty cool. So you have this deck able to shut that out, but to close the loop entirely, what shuts out blue-red tempo? It's generally going to be, you might have guessed this, white-blue blockers. It's all connected. White-blue blockers is a little slower, and it can be hurt by the aggro side of the blue deck. But if white-blue draws well, and you know, like, what, blue-red doesn't draw out of its mind, you can gum them up with blockers. Red-blue does not really have, or sorry, blue-red does not really have high maneuver, so they have to rely on burning blockers, and blockers like Ilfrith can already kind of put a little bit of a damper on blue-red's aggression. But then later in the game, especially if the white-blue blocker side is sitting on the Suletta splash, the Witch from Mercury splash, you're going to be kind of at tough ends, because they can always put a Kira onto a strike, and you know, you deal it 1 damage with like Marita, and then you swing with Marita, and they don't want to lose it, so they just like let it get pinged again, and you go through. But then you hit them with Battle the Aces. That's 1, 2, and then 1, 2, 3. So that's 5 damage on their 5 HP. But the moment they put a Suletta down there, you don't have that option. They can just let your Kshatriya with Marita go through, and there's nothing you can do short of putting 4 more damage on it. Well, sorry, yeah, 4 more damage on it to allow that to happen. And if it's not rested yet, you're actually kind of stuck on options. So these bigger HP bodies are really hard. If they land a Freedom and then put a Suletta under a Freedom, like, you might as well just know that the thing's probably gonna stay on board until they wish to let it go. So yes, white blue blockers can actually really get in the way of UR tempo, and that kind of makes the wheel that I was speaking about. As you guys can see one more time, it's like white blue blockers, which can kind of have some trouble versus green white wing, which can kind of have some trouble against aggro, which can kind of have some trouble against blue-red tempo, which can kind of have some trouble against white-blue blockers. And so that is kind of where the meta, I believe, is circular. And now I want to move over and kind of talk about why this is going to impact your tournament runs and what that means moving forward. So what you'll find when it comes to these type of wheel-like metas is that there is no true best deck, because every deck has its inherent weaknesses and its inherent strengths that'll get it like either like through the rounds or cooked when it sees the wrong matchup and both players draw fairly well. And this is going to be, I think, what's going to mirror the Gundam format for until like set 2 drops. Actually, like, look at the Gen Con events. I think this actually shows this right off the rip. When we started this game, a lot of people felt that the de facto standard for power is white-blue blockers. And while that may be true, I think that's just the first deck that people tested enough to realize, wow, this is extremely powerful. But when we got to Gen Con, what we saw was a lot of Gundam Wing decks, a influx of Gundam Wing decks. Why? Because a lot of people believed that white-blue blockers was going to be the meta, and what they found in testing was that green-white wing had an inherent advantage over just the white-blue blockers. It's not like it's completely 100% in their favor, because white-blue could actually just draw aggressive and switch the mindset to just go in and be more aggressive with all of their cards, turning their deck into more of a turn everything sideways deck, and they could really get it through. And maybe that's a whole topic for another different video, but a lot of Gundam Wing decks were present in order to combat that. And what fed off the Gundam Wing decks? The decks that you saw either winning these events or getting very close to winning these events, which were the 1 Year War aggro green blue decks and the blue red tempo decks. Both of these decks are fast enough to capitalize off of Gundam Wing. And if you look at this, let's say you have a couple rounds and most of the blue or most of the white blue decks are losing to the green white decks. Well, now you have the green blue aggros and the blue red tempos that were able to get through their earlier rounds, whether it be against white blue blockers or green white wing, that are now able to just breeze through green white wing with extreme aggression, sliding under their end game. But now that we are in this current meta, you're seeing a lot of green blue aggro. You're seeing a lot of blue red tempo. That may be the most played deck right now. You're seeing a fair amount of green white wing. So with all this aggro and tempo running around, making it very hard for wing to top, what happens when white blue blockers comes back into the fray to combat all of this blue red tempo? You're gonna see a shift. Blue red tempo could get easily pushed out by this, and then this is going to allow wing to have a little bit more room to breathe if people stick with wing. So I think that when it comes to this wheel, it's going to be more so about trying to keep up with the current trends and doing your best to counterpick it. If the wave is blue red destroying everything, then you may want to foray into a more aggressive blue-white or white-blue in order to combat that, and hope that you don't run into too much green-white. You know what I'm saying? If you think that if you get to an event and you think that a bunch of people are gonna be on like white-blue in order to counter blue-red, this may be the time to just stick to your guns and keep playing your green-white and hope that you maybe dodge your aggro matchups once or twice and then face a healthy amount of the mid-range white-blue. But this wheel means that there is no deck that you can just be like, yeah, this is always gonna be the best choice. Every deck has a chance, especially with matchup roulette, but recognizing the current trends, what's currently popular, and doing your best to scout events, going to, the day zeros when people are getting into their hotels, talking to people in discords, seeing what's going to be out. It's going to be a puzzle. Actively trying to predict what part of the wheel the format is on is probably going to give you your best chances at winning the game. Does that make sense? Let me know in the comments if that makes sense. So let me know what you guys think. I do think that the way the format is set up, we will not see a consistent format. I think we're going to just see the wheels turn and people trying to hop on and either making the correct predictions and having a little matchup luck, or just getting swept because they did not make the correct predictions and got jumped by the same bad matchup multiple times. Past that, I hope you guys are excited for more content. Now that I am back from my grandfather's funeral, I am going to really be kicking it up, and I got a new focus. There's some more news, and it's really kind of got me looking at things from a different perspective, and I will continue to make good content as long as you guys continue to watch it. And yeah, we're going to be getting back into the gameplay videos. I have a couple things I sharpened up from the last test run, and I really cannot wait to showcase that on the channel. We're finally going to start putting up content on the Patreon, so look out for that. Go down in the description, check out all of my links in the description in order to find out all the things I'm doing over in Universe X, and I hope you guys have a great day. Later.